Has the Fed doomed itself? Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ainslie Insights, brought to you by Ainslie Bullion, Ainslie Crypto, and the Gold and Silver Standard, as the Ainslie Group celebrates 50 years. Today, we welcome back Sam, who's taken an interesting approach to the news today, looking at how the media itself manipulates the markets. How are you going today, Sam?
Good, Chris. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Now, usually when we're doing these news pieces, you're talking about what's happening in the news, but today I see you took a different angle and you started to really talk about the news itself and how it's becoming very narrow and focused on really only one thing in particular. So do you want to tell us a little bit of background around that?
Yes, the news has pretty much just become focused on the Fed or central banks' interest rate policies and their statements. So you used to look at, what companies are doing. I mean, we had that recently with semiconductors, but it's really a rare thing for company news to be a big news mover. The main thing people look at now is Fed statements, interest rate decisions. The next thing after that is people speculating on interest rate decisions. So last and least is what's actually happening in the economy. Are companies doing well? It's all just about, are we going to go back to easy money and when?
It's certainly, I'm certainly guilty of that. I mean, that's my whole sort of focus with liquidity, because from my angle, it's all that matters these days is whether more money is coming into the system or not. But that, like you've just pointed out, that hasn't always been the case. So when do you think this change occurred? Is this something that, like, it obviously wasn't always like that. So what's really behind that? When did this happen?
Well, it was always secretly behind it, in the
Yeah.
background, because typically what a Fed chair would do, for example, is they would lay really low. They would just come out and give some insight about inflation, or controlling inflation, or if they need to add a little bit of liquidity here or there. And they were very shy, to camera shy. Now, when the 2008 global financial crisis came, they had to put a really positive spin on inflation. So there were things coming out saying, oh, is inflation just printing money? No, it's more than that. It's more complicated than that. They're really, really trying to put a spin on the helicopter money. And Ben Bernanke came out and he did a great job
Mm.
of gloating and being the media's darling, and always being in the camera, talking about how he's saving the economy by printing a lot of money. Now, inadvertently, he put the Fed into the spotlight as being the ones responsible for the economy. And that was only compounded later with the COVID crash, where they dropped interest rates to pretty much nothing around the world. And people can see clearly it's all about the central banks. And they haven't shied away from the cameras. Recently, you look at, Powell and the whole gang of Fed speakers. They're coming out making statements weekly.
That,
They bask in the glory of swinging the markets around. So
that's absolutely correct, because and I love how you really brought that back to Ben Bernanke back during that period, because I remember the very famous 60 Minutes interview that he did in the US, where really it was very mainstream, this idea that they were in control, and everyone was sort of talking about it. And prior to that, you probably didn't even know their names. And now, just like you've said, we're here seemingly from a Fed governor every day or every second day with their opinion on what's going to happen next, and sort of front running or telling the market what they think they're going to do or their opinion on it. Do you think that that ultimately is a risky strategy that the Fed's undertaking here, to be getting that involved? I mean, it certainly feels like politically it should be risky,
well,
because that'd have to be a target, surely.
yeah, of course. I mean, you look back at, like, when I was working at trading firms, it was a requirement that we had a tab open for Trump's Twitter, because Trump would tweet something about what he thinks about the oil market or what he thinks about trade with China, and that would send the market in the opposite direction so fast. If
Yeah.
you didn't have his Twitter open, you didn't have a chair at one of these companies, because you didn't know what was going on.
I
Now
vaguely
that's
remember during that period of time, weren't there bots people were setting up that were effectively trading whatever Trump had said at the time, Twitter trading bots and things. It was insane, wasn't it?
100%. Now, that was just a president talking about things, which is a president's job. It's a president's job to get asked by a reporter, what do you think about trade with China? What do you think about, oil? Americans are struggling with oil. And to his credit, he did have a lot of conviction behind him. People, Wall Street traders, people who worked at JP Morgan and all these firms were watching his Twitter and trading on it. Now, he made a few calls that went against the other calls. So, for example, he said on a Friday, he made a comment about oil. And then on a Saturday, when the market was closed, he made an opposing comment that made the market go the other way. So Monday morning, it was like a bloodbath. Everyone was racing to close out their trades once the market opened. Now, that's just a president, in a way, kind of doing his job and talking about markets. Now, the Fed actually controls the currency. The Fed has essentially godlike power over the world reserve currency. They control the interest rates. They don't listen to presidents. They make the interest rates what they want it, what they want rates to be, and they can cause a great deal of pain. Now, the play you can see playing out for the past, I would say about 2 years, is Fed speaker or Fed governor comes out and says, I think interest rates should do X pretty soon. Everyone puts a trade on that. The next day, another Fed speaker comes out and says, I agree with so-and-so. I think interest rates should do X. And then on the Saturday, Powell comes out and says, oh, I disagree. I think interest rates should actually do Y. And then everyone gets liquidated or is in a panic Monday morning trying to flip their trades around. We even saw that happen recently. So doing these games, I mean, when Trump made a few bad calls, people stopped following his Twitter. Now, you can't just stop following the Fed. They control the currency. You have to follow the Fed. And them enjoying being in the limelight, openly trading on their calls and doing teamwork. You say this, and I'll come out the next day and say that. What are they thinking? They're making themselves a target.
Yeah, and that is very much a concern. I mean, we've talked about it multiple times, and we'll continue talking about a lot more about this. Yeah, it's a very important year. We're going into this election year. I was reading a headline yesterday saying it'll be the longest campaign in history, because that's the nature of the world that we live in at the moment, with social media and lots of everything else around that, where people are focused on it all the time. Very dangerous role to be playing when you're supposed to be effectively independent. And as you said before, sitting in the background, if they're a front and center player, that raises a lot of questions. I think the final question I have around this to ask you and get your opinion on is it possible to live in a world where this isn't the case? Like, I know you said, we have to listen ultimately to the Fed because we need to know what's happening, and it is important. But what would it be? How hard would it be to stop being reliant on central banks in this way? Is there a possible scenario where we don't have to go down this path time and time again?
Well, there's some easy steps people can do, and one thing is they don't have to keep depending on central banks. For example, one really simple thing someone could do is go down to a farmer's market, a fruit and vegetable market, with a 1 ounce silver coin, and say, I'd like a week of fruit and vegetables with this. And the thing is, a lot of farmers know exactly what gold and silver is, and they'd be happy to take it. And if not, a quick chat could turn that around. And then on the other side, instead of using an expensive, complicated digital machine that needs, printer and recharging all the time, subscription fees, transaction fees, every transaction going through financial surveillance, all this sort of stuff, is someone just handing you a silver coin. And that can sit in your till, that can sit in your money box for years. It doesn't matter, because it's holding its value. We would say it's going up in value compared to fiat currency, but it's so much faster to just take a coin in your hand, no stress, no drama, and you get real money. and people still do that with fiat coins. It's just as easy to do it with a silver coin, and everyone would be a lot happier. So starting doing things like that can really turn things around, and then that gets rid of a lot of the issues with monopolies as well, which will enforce, oh no, you can't use cash anymore, this one's card only. The sort of route
Yep.
a big monopoly can drive people down. So very easy to reverse the whole process just by handing someone a coin and saying, will you take this for this week's coffee or this week's fruit and veg?
Fascinating. So there is an answer there, and we know it very well. We just don't always think to apply it because, like we talk about it all the time, gold and silver. It's a way to opt out of that system. But here you're saying that is actually a viable way to opt out of this system as it stands right now.
Yep, very easy.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, thank you as always for opening our minds a little bit more to these concepts, Sam, and digging into that in the news today. Because a really, really good point there at the end that we do have the means within our reach to actually avoid continually relying on this manipulation. So thank you for that.
All right, I might see you next week and talk more about what the Fed's saying.
Looking forward to it. We won't be able to avoid that for sure. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll chat again soon.